But firstly, I'd like to acknowledge the fact that I'm speaking to you on the land of the Awabakal people in Lake Macquarie, which is interesting in a flexible working sense in itself. And I pay my respects to elders past, present and emerging, and to those living in this area. And I'd like to also extend that respect to any other Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people on the call today with us. So we're hosting this webinar today on how you can effectively manage dispersed remote teams who may need to work flexibly. Over the past 2 years at the Public Service Commission, we've been working with the sector to improve flexible working in support of the Premier's policy commitment. And maintaining or improving services is a real challenge for us right now with COVID-19 pandemic. And how do we protect our business continuity when almost overnight the way we worked is tipped on its head? It's our challenge, all of us, to find the balance between the needs of citizens, customers and stakeholders, as well as our people, as we maintain critical services and protect productivity. So today, the webinar is going to take a very practical approach on what you can do. You may be doing some of this already, and that will be a great validation that you're on the right track. For others, it's an opportunity to do things differently. And the good news is that you won't need to learn a whole new way of managing, but you'll need to put more emphasis on the things that you might take for granted when you usually see most of your team in an office most of the time. After the webinar, we'll also invite you to join a closed LinkedIn group where you can seek advice or assistance on flexible working from our subject matter experts. We'll learn more about resources that are already available and connect with colleagues across the sector so you can share the creative solutions we're all developing as we go. This is a brave new world for us in the way we're working, and we know we've got a great plan on how this can come together, but working 5 days a week remotely is a really different way to what we were doing previously, so we can all learn from each other. I'd like to take a moment though to acknowledge that as public servants, we not only help the vulnerable in our community, but our workforce also contains many employees who have been made vulnerable by the situation we have now. That situation may disproportionately affect our Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander colleagues with disability, and those who are ageing with existing health conditions. So as teams, we'll need to step up to provide support so they can keep themselves safe, yet still remain connected. And as managers, we'll need to proactively offer flexible working to people who might be worried to ask for it and find solutions for using it in ways that we mightn't have thought of before. Flexible working can be used to take the evolving guidance of who should self-isolate or work from home if they can, meet our responsibilities to our citizens and make it all work in practice. So I'm now going to hand over to the fabulous team, Siobhan Bray and Kat Coughlin from the Flexible Working team, who've lived and breathed this for a while now. And I'm going to sit back and listen. But in the meantime, go well, take care and look after yourselves and your people. And we'll take questions at the end and outline how we can help moving forward. Thanks, ladies.
Wonderful. Thanks so much, Scott. Well, first, we just wanted to start with talking about what we mean by a virtual team. Siobhan, if you could just move the slides on, that'd be great.
Okay.
Really, a virtual team is one where everyone works at least 2.5 days away from the usual workplace. So that at this time, that's likely to be at home, but it might be elsewhere. Not everyone can work at home. But even when we've come past this time where everyone is encouraged to go and work from home, the principles that we will discuss today can really help you with your flexibility amongst your team members longer term. So as a manager of a virtual team, you really need to be able to adapt your management style and the way your team communicates, collaborates and connects. Siobhan, are you able to move the slides on, please? Great. So up front, you really need to think about how you can adapt your face-to-face management skills to be replaced with ones that are done remotely. So what are those workarounds that we'll need for this time? So for example, if you're used to having face-to-face meetings with your team, we'll need to be able to switch those to online, obviously. Does your team know when to use email or collaboration technologies such as MS Teams? How can you make sure those online meetings are effective? When is it absolutely necessary in your workplace to bring people together face to face? So good team communication means that everyone has the information that they need to be able to perform in their roles. So when everyone's dispersed, it becomes crucial to productivity and those feelings of inclusion if everyone can agree on the processes that we'll use for communication at this time. So you need to decide what is the minimum contact you will have with each person in your team, whether that be one-on-one meetings or whole group meetings. Think about those team members at this time who are your extroverts. They're more extrinsically motivated and they might really struggle with maintaining their motivation and that momentum at home. So just ask them what is going to work for them best, and what new habits can they form to be able to avoid isolation and keep up that motivation at this time. But we will discuss that a little bit more later. Alternatively, you may have people in your team who actually just want to get on and focus. They might be more introverted. They might want to talk less during this time. Remember that we're all pretty, dealing with feelings of anxiety and things are changing every day to day. So yeah, we really need to know where each member of our team's coming from and what they need in terms of support at this time. So just ask the person what works for them. Decide also as a team how you will share information and stay connected on those important matters. It's so easy to fall out of the loop when you're working remotely. And we will feel it more at this time. It's just harder to stay in touch and different people receive information differently online. So yeah, we need to talk as teams about what works best. You decide as a team when you will use email, when you might use MS Teams or other technologies, when you might use Skype or phone conferencing. It really depends on what you have access to within your department or agency and what technology works best for you. But we do encourage you to pick a platform at this time and just stick to it. It is just too confusing if people having to look at Skype and Teams and email and all the different kind of places. It's easy for information to fall through the cracks. So yeah, just important that you pick that platform and stick to it. It will just make it so much easier. And then decide how your team will communicate and collaborate with each other and also with other teams. Obviously, we have those interdependencies between teams. So how will you work best with those teams as well? How will you let them know where you're up to on projects that are shared and what to expect from you as a team? And then how will you use that technology that's available to you to collaborate? So for instance, we're so used to having face-to-face meetings where we can put things up on a whiteboard or use sticky notes. They're very physical actions, but at this time we don't have that. But there are technologies that are available, things like Neuriva or Canva, that you can use to access the same or to go through the same processes of collaboration. And then in terms of your clients, what are their expectations around your responsiveness? Will it mean that at this time it's a little bit harder for you to get back to them as quickly as you might have? So you just need to let your clients know what they can expect of you at this time and really just talk through those dilemmas or the misgivings that they may have. Because obviously the whole idea is to maintain our productivity, our business continuity at this time. Now, in terms of getting the foundations right, there are some basic foundation stones that we need to put in place at this time. So obviously our meetings will need to change. Siobhan, I just wonder if you could move forward the slide, please. So in terms of our meetings, meetings, online are much just the same as face-to-face, but they just require a lot more preparation. And we're also encouraging you to make sure that they're accessible. I think that's pretty good practice generally, because the sector has some really strong targets around improving participation for people with disabilities. So this is a good opportunity to pick up those skills and make sure your meetings are accessible. So before every meeting, we encourage you to send out a clear agenda, one that is in a screen reader format, so that anyone can access the agenda. and include in the agenda what your key topics are, what time will be allocated to each item, who will lead the discussion, just so it's very clear how people can participate. Also, who will be attending and who the apologies will be from, because actually it does help if people know who will be at the meeting in terms of being able to raise issues or make decisions together. Which content will you need to send out and make it clear that that your team members need to read ahead of time? Are there any other relevant documents or information that you need to distribute ahead of the meeting? And then once you are actually meeting, how is the meeting going to run? So how will your attendees signal that they want to speak or respond to a question? What's that etiquette for listening to others? You need to work this out as a team. Do you expect all the microphones and the cameras to be muted or turned off, or do you actually expect them to be turned on? I mean, there's different schools of thoughts around that. For instance, some team leaders prefer cameras to be switched on because then they can, I guess, ensure that engagement, that they can tell that people are listening. But it does draw down on bandwidth, on internet speed. So, you know, it just really, you need to work that out to find out what works for your team. We use the chat tool for questions. Is it useful for your team members to have a role? Things like taking notes or monitoring the chat or keeping time. I guess those are all things that you can do to keep people engaged. I think it's important that you try and keep monologues to a minimum, and I guess plan your meetings in a way that will be more interactive. It's easy for people to miss things when they're online for meetings. So if you have someone who is gathering all the actions and decisions that were decided at the meeting, then get them to send that out afterwards so that's really clear what each person needs to do coming out of a meeting. Obviously, we need reliable access to technology at this time, and I'm sure that we're all, you know, in a whole new brave world in terms of working out what internet speed we need to be able to work away from the office. But obviously, if things collapse and we can't actually use the internet, then we will need those workarounds. How is it that we will still access our files, those central IT systems, everything we need to be able to do online, and even like software and data that you might need for your role, how will those be available from home? And what alternatives can your ICT team provide if they're not available? So for instance, just from our team, we're using MS Teams a lot, and I will go on to just talk briefly about the features of MS Teams. We use that to record our meeting notes, and we tag people where they're required to action a different item that's been discussed. If someone's meeting drops out while they're in the middle of the meeting, if their video conference drops out, then we can hit record really quickly and then they are able to access the meeting afterwards. So that's a really great feature of something like MS Teams. Zoom does the same thing. And also, we just also need to think about our workspace at home. So have the conversation with your team about what it's like to work from home. I mean, 1 day a week might not be such an issue, but now that we're shifting to 5 days a week, at least for this next few months, potentially, yeah, ergonomics becomes a bit more of an issue. So make sure you talk about whether or not people's ergonomics are going to help them stay productive in their role. Is their home workspace free from distractions? Can they actually get their work done? And even aspects like slips, trips and falls. Is their home workspace clear of those sorts of hazards that might actually present a problem? And obviously we also need to talk to our team about overwork, because that is a very real issue, but we will go on to talk about that. Now, just quickly, I did want to show you the features of MS Teams. I've taken a screenshot just of actually my MS Teams space, and you can see there that all my teams appear in that left-hand column, and that what is, I guess, common to all of the teams is that general channel. So once you've set up a team, you can then really easily invite people in if you've got their email address, and then you can set up new channels for your team. So you can see our PSC Flex team's got the general channel, and that is really where all the discussion occurs. It's a little bit like Facebook, but for the workplace, obviously. So you can have chat with each other, you can ask questions of your team, you can even do some of the social cohesion stuff around gifts and jokes and whatnot. Although once you find that the chatter does get a bit intense on there, you might want to set up a different channel for that more social stuff, because then it just means that you can separate a bit more easily the, I guess, the chatter from that really intense kind of decision making and people being able to work on files together. So you can easily upload files to that place. And the advantage of Teams is that multiple people can be working on the same file at the same time. You can pop your meeting invites in that space so people know how to access the meeting. And it's really easy to record your meetings once you've started meetings as well. And then within a short space of time after a meeting, the video of the recording will appear in the same space. So it's really the place where all the action happens on Teams, that general panel. You'll see up the top there, there's a range of tabs. And so the general tab is always there, but you can add a tab that has your files so that all the files are in one place. You can add a tab that's about meeting notes so that people can actually write up meeting notes all at the same time or have a brainstorm session. There's also that little plus icon there. It takes you to a space where you can access a heap of different apps that all talk with Teams that might be helpful to you. Basic ones like Excel, but then there's some really fancy ones as well. So once you're on Teams, you can just get in and have a play. I've got to say that none of my team attended a workshop to know how to use Teams. We just got in and started splashing around and working out how it works. But there are some really great YouTube clips that Microsoft has set up about how to use Teams. So this could be a good time to explore those while we're, you know, changing the way that we're working. Now, just over on the left, there is that darker menu item there. So you can see at the top is activity. It's a little bell, and that will actually come up as it'll show you notifications if there's new activity on any of your teams. And you can see there that it also becomes bold. So I've got two teams there that have bold writing on them, and that indicates to me that there's some new comments that have been added that I haven't looked at yet. And you can also use chat, so a bit like Skype for business. You can chat with one-on-one or multiple people from that space. And one of the advantages of Teams is that it records everything that's been said in the chat and in that conversation space, which is helpful if you need to access that information later on. If you click on that Teams menu item, then you can access all your teams, and obviously meetings, the calendar item there will show you what all your meetings are, and that actually talks to Outlook if you're on Outlook. So all your meetings will appear in that space. You can make calls, video calls, or just you know, phone calls from that space. And then also all your files are in the same space. But so it's quite handy. And we did think it was worth just, yeah, running people through the features pretty quickly. Now I'll just move on to talk about dilemmas and challenges. Obviously, we've had such a rapid change to the way that we're working at this time. I mean, we do have different parts of the sector that have already been operating as virtual teams for years, so it won't be too different to them, but then others that just aren't used to this or haven't had it tested in a real way. So we do want to say up front that there will be dilemmas and challenges, but this is a great opportunity to plan and prepare for those and to, I guess, be open about and share your concerns and your questions with your team at this time, and invite them to do the same, to share their concerns or questions with you as a team, because then together you can really develop those effective solutions or workarounds as a team. So it's a shared responsibility, and that also builds that trust and that cohesion that you'll really need to rely on at this time within your team. So the way to do that would just be to start by thinking about a regular day. So what is the technology that you use? What are the resources or the files or other resources that you need to be able to access to get those tasks done? And what could go wrong? So, you know, we will send out this template after the session. It's a very simple process, very effective in terms of being able to plan and prepare. So you might want to send this out to your team members and get everyone to work on this at the same time. You could even load it into MS Teams and work on it, you know, at a team meeting, have a bit of a brainstorm session. And then what are the workarounds? So what are the agreed workarounds within your team that you all know will be your plan B and your plan C if things fail, so that you can keep getting your work done? Yeah, and you can use that template across any of the tasks that your team will need to do. So for instance, what will be the workarounds if video conferencing fails for everyone? Do you have a telephone conference service still available to you as a team that you can pretty quickly switch into and make sure that everyone knows that that will be the plan B if a video conference fails? What happens if your records management system drops out? What will you do? I mean, it is as simple as just saving things to the desktop and then transferring them across to your records management later. But it just really helps if, you know, your team knows that that's what's expected of them. And then lastly, what are those deal breakers? So what are the things that as a team just won't work or you won't be able to get done at this time? So for instance, if you're a team that runs lots of events, obviously we're not running events at this time. That's one pretty big example, but there will be other smaller examples that you know is part of your work that you just actually can't get done at this time, or you've been told you can't do in the past, but actually as a team, you can use your creativity to come up with solutions at this time. So for instance, I've got a friend who is, she works in dialysis at one of the hospitals close to where I live. And previously they've been told that they can't do any changing of dialysis machines or anything, that they have to see the person out the hospital. But obviously they're trying to keep people away from hospitals at this time. So instead, she has set up a system where she can talk with the person's GP directly and just help the GP know how to change the settings on the dialysis at this time. And I mean, she said to me how amazing it is how fast those fences are being crashed down at this time to allow for flexibility, which is kind of exciting. And what's really exciting is just how much people can actually make these things work when they have to. So yeah, what are those things that will be a challenge, but that you can rely on your team to come up with some creative solutions at this time, because they know their work better than anyone. And so they're the best people to come up with solutions. Now I will hand over to Siobhan to share with you a team-based approach.
Thanks, Kat. Over the past 18 months here at the Public Service Commission, we've run a series of interventions in partnership with a number of different agencies across an incredibly diverse range of workplace contexts. They're behaviourally based interventions, so the idea is to start with changing the behaviour, and from there it starts to challenge some of the beliefs and the mindsets. And these have been around an entire team all working flexibly at the same time. It was an initiative we developed in order to help agencies take that Premier's policy commitment of all roles flex on an if not, why not basis and make it work in practice. Now we can see real resonance to the way everybody's now working now. So we'd strongly recommend that everyone take a team-based approach, which is what this design approach, this methodology is called. There's no question that we're probably in the middle of the biggest behavioural change intervention of our lives at the moment. It's not something any of us could have anticipated. It's a deceptively simple approach. That's its genius in many respects, but it is incredibly effective. And we thought we'd briefly outline these because a lot of you won't be in necessarily classically office-based environments. You may have a mix of workforces. And what we've learned from this approach is no matter which workforce you're in, there's something in this approach that can help you challenge the way that you're working at the moment. And for the more immediate purposes, it can help you to figure out which elements of remote ability you might have in roles you never thought of in the past. Now, for many of us, certainly in office-based environments, there is really one major flex working outcome we're trying to achieve here, unlike other pilots, which is we want everyone to work at home as much as is feasible to get their job done. That's the socially responsible thing to do, and we accept that. But within that, there may be other forms of flexibility that people are going to need in order to meet their other commitments as well, whether they're family commitments, caring commitments, other personal health commitments. So taking a team-based approach helps you identify the outcomes that you're going to need to maintain or improve in your team, but also open up the flexibility that everyone will need. So the first step we recommend, and again, we will circulate this template afterwards, is sit down with your team, set aside maybe an hour and a half, 2 hours max, but invest the time and identify what outcomes you need to maintain or enhance over this next period. And the 3 outcomes we identify as being of primary importance are business outcomes. So as a team, what's the delivery objectives that you have over this period that you've agreed you're going to maintain or enhance? Secondly, what are the team outcomes? Because of course we appreciate that maintaining cohesion and connection over this period is critically important as well. And then what are the individual outcomes that we want to try and maintain as well? There's work-life balance, efficient use of time, but also not sacrificing our skills development if that's possible. And then there's the well-being aspects that are very important right now. So the key is to discuss those 3 lenses with your team and arrive at a plan of action that you will agree on and will buy into over this next period. And consider the 3 of them as being in balance. So you need to achieve an equilibrium between all 3. That document will then form the basis of everything you measure yourself against to progress, to check how your team's progressing over the next period. And it becomes of critical importance because it's your reference point for how you're going. Going backwards, going backwards, back to slide number 2. The second step is to challenge your assumptions about how jobs work at the moment and what's the best way to achieve our outcomes. And I will do a bit more analysis or a bit more discussion later on around role design and work design, because that's something we're all getting a bit of a masterclass in at the moment, I think. Then identify any other flexibility options that your team might need. And this is where you have a very honest conversation around coverage plans and what might be needed, particularly if you've got urgent matters coming up at odd hours, and a pragmatic recognition of all the different things that people are going to be juggling over this next period. And it may well mean, I mean, certainly within some elements of the public sector at the moment, there is some discussion around renegotiating core and bandwidth, and there's been some permissions given around that. But it is around discussing, well, maybe instead of doing a classic 9 to 5, you are going to need to split that day. If you're juggling shifts or rosters with a partner, it may mean, where that's feasible, having a discussion around compressed hours. So it may mean having to truncate hours over certain days. But then at that point, it's also very necessary to have a conversation around ensuring the work actually can be done that way. And you may need to introduce some work share arrangements, and that's a real opportunity to look at trading tasks between different teammates. Because often, while we focus flexible work on the where, the when and the how, it's not until we introduce the who at times as well, who does the work and whether that needs to be moved around during this period, that you really unlock some of the opportunities for flexibility. The last step, which I can't emphasise enough its importance, is to set up the rules of the road. So establish what your operating principles are and what your team culture will be with regards to flexibility. It's a very simple thing for your team to design. We'll give you a template again, and we'll talk about it a bit more in depth in a moment. But it is of critical importance that everyone agrees how they're going to do that and then sticks to it. Consistency is king at this point. And consistency is what builds trust over this period as well. So it's important to agree very simple things like, how are you going to communicate where you are? How are you going to keep people updated when things change? How are you going to let everybody know that update? And that's where MS Teams or something with similar functionality can really come into play. So the last thing we want is to end up with a system where some people are having to drop the ball, although it may be very necessary. Other people are feeling like they're having to pick up the slack, particularly managers. It's a sentiment managers often share with us, and we don't want that to be the case if it's at all avoidable. No one except your team can know their work better than they do. So by sitting with your team for a brief period of time and identifying all of those things and agreeing them, you'll get a level of buy-in that will make your task immeasurably easier. When we say team-based approach, we mean it's cooperative in nature. We mean that we challenge ourselves. We also mean that we challenge our own biases as well. And it's an interesting time to be trying to do that when we're under so much stress. But I would encourage everyone to really challenge what you think you understand by flexible working. It's interesting, for the past 2 years in the Flex Work team, we've been saying to everybody ad nauseum, it's not just working from home. But in reality, for any of us who can do it right now, it is all about working from home. I guess the message now has to pivot to be, it's working from home, but it can be a bunch of other flexibility as well, whether it's compressed, whether it's job share, whether it's those people who may need to temporarily go part-time in order to manage their caring arrangements as well. So we encourage you to talk as a team and then come up with a coverage plan to best protect your productivity over that period. So when we say work design, we mean challenging the idea that the way you do your work now is the way you can do it over the next period. We will have some guidance out within the next week around how to do some basic role analysis, and we do want to keep it as simple as possible. But it is about sitting with your team and identifying what the deliverables are and how they could be achieved in different ways. Now, as I mentioned before, it may mean that you have to cut back on some tasks for some people. It may mean that they have to be shared or distributed in other ways. Again, have that conversation with your team. Challenge your assumptions as well about what the ideal worker is. I don't think anyone over this period can be the ideal worker. So it's really important that we challenge this idea that any of us are going to be perfect at this and manage it all 9 to 5, because especially those of us with caring arrangements or trying to help as much as possible in our community, then our workday is going to look radically different. The DILO, if you do the day in the life of template that we did before, that will help you with this task immeasurably. It goes from job redesign or work redesign, which in and of itself sounds like a bit of a complex concept. But once you break it down to tasks, you apply a lens over those tasks, and we will give you a tool to do this that looks at complexity, that looks at urgency, and looks at the ability to distribute those tasks as well. Then all of a sudden it becomes a very simple analysis that can help you hugely in future and sets you up well for future challenges you may have, like people needing to return part-time from parental leave, or wanting and requesting going part-time because they need to juggle their study commitments. It's one of the most commonly reported difficulties from managers is the part-time piece. And ensuring that people still get challenging, stimulating careers out of that. So we will have this tool out in the next week that will help you with that. But for the short term, we will use the hive mind within your team to save you time and energy. And you'll be surprised, actually, at the creative solutions you'll be able to come up with in your team with a bit of deep dive thinking. There's also the other opportunity. We talk a lot about overwork and trying to redistribute work. It's also very possible within your team that there'll be some underwork over this period. So also think through any online training modules or any study that people can pick up at this time in order to keep them engaged and occupied, and really grabbing the opportunity to do that. Like I said, now's not really the ideal time for role design, but if you have a conversation about critical tasks and the projects have been shelved, what, if anything, can be shoved overboard for now, then it will set you up better for being able to respond to conditions as they change. Now, rules of the road. I mentioned these before as being hugely important. The link that we send out afterwards will have a copy of the template, and the LinkedIn group that we'll be sending out will also have a copy of the template. These are just suggestions for protocols that you can set up within your team, but document all the discussions, or ensure that you have an awareness and an understanding across your team of all the things that Kat and I have discussed today. So how will you meet and communicate, and how often? Will there be a guaranteed crossover day? So within my peer group, in my team at the Public Service Commission, we've agreed Tuesday will be our crossover day. How will you document the conversations that you're going to have to ensure that people are not missing things or missing out on things? Because as Kat mentioned, you really feel it when you're working remotely. You feel that isolation much more. How will you give notice if you need to change your days or change your arrangements? And how will you get in touch with each other? And then what's also critically important is share that with other teams as well, because it rattles people. It really rattles their confidence if everyone within a team knows how to get hold of each other, but a different team that you interact with has a completely different approach. And that's okay, but as long as you understand each other's approach. So if your team is going to update all of their mobile numbers in Skype and a different team is going to update all of their mobile numbers in Outlook, it's fine, but make sure everyone understands what they're doing, so you're not having that extra little bit of decision making each time of, oh, I've got to get hold of that person in that team. How do I do that? I don't know how to find them. Email's there, of course, but it's less efficient than some of the other tools that we have and less distributed because it's one-on-one rather than group. So think through the tools that you'll discuss in your team, but make sure they're widely known as well. This is how we'll be in touch. This is how you can contact us efficiently. So the next thing to discuss is, of course, the importance of managing for outcomes. Now, it kind of goes without saying that we should all have updated performance plans at all times. We should all be very clear on our objectives, but it becomes particularly important in this period that that discipline is followed. So ensure that your team is very clear on the expectations of them, what their work tasks are, the level to which that work should be performed, the priorities, the deadlines, but also the outcomes, why you're doing it and the change that it will affect. So agree on who will be available, who will be working on what tasks. Plan a backup if you can, if that's feasible. So plan for pivoting in case one person needs to step back from something, and have an honest conversation about trust. Also have an honest conversation. Kat mentioned earlier that some people are extrinsically motivated. It means that generally that they need more structures in place in order to get them going on things. And most people know when they're a little bit like that. They could be somebody who's naturally very quiet and a little bit introspective, but they really rely on coming into the office in order to get themselves galvanised each day. They're the people that you will hear in your team telling you, I don't like working from home. I like to come into the office. That's how I get my work done. That's how I get motivated. So have an honest conversation with them about the extra structures they might need. And again, something like Teams can be quite useful for you at that time because you can set up tasks within Teams, and that could be useful for them for planning or organising their day. Kat will talk a little bit more with you soon about the importance of routines, and that's also hugely helpful for people extrinsically motivated. But we do need to make sure that whatever systems we're using can be adaptable and then extended for people's different preferred working styles over this period. Trust is an important thing that I would probably loop back to that one to emphasise. Well, to quote Hemingway, if you want to know if you can trust someone, then trust them. So it's the best way to find out. But set up those structures as well, because the greatest way to build trust is to do what you say that you're going to do. So plan your routines, plan your objectives, plan how you're going to measure your success against those objectives, and then do that consistently. I'll hand back to Kat now to talk a little bit more about the very important topic of team cohesion.
Thank you, Siobhan. Well, obviously one of the most common concerns about virtual teams is the one of people experiencing isolation. You know, we'll be geographically separated from each other, so, and maybe even from our stakeholders. So right now, this is a real risk that we need to mitigate differently. Team cohesion is really very crucial for an effective and engaged team. So having that irregular face-to-face interaction or an over-reliance on email, even a build-up of unresolved issues could really undermine your cohesion as a team. So what are the processes or habits that you can build to mitigate against isolation? For example, you might want to arrange team members into pairs or buddies so that someone working remotely has that regular point of contact with someone who may be located closer to the team, if that's the way things are going. It is particularly useful to do that as a practice just for new starters, you know, so that there is that one point of contact that's not necessarily the team leader who new starters can go to just to find out what are the ways of doing things around here. But also it can be helpful to set up a buddy system between a more experienced person and a less experienced person, just to provide that work support that is needed, and especially at this time. We encourage you to have catch-up time at the beginning of your meetings. So instead of just launching straight into the agenda items and the business that there is to discuss, maybe set aside 5 minutes at the start. Have catch-up time where you ask people what they did on the weekend, or another question that just really helps people to, I guess, discuss who they are as a person, not just what they're working on. It will really just help that cohesion as a team. And if issues do come up, between team members at this time that affect the way that the team is functioning. It's so important to get on top of that up front, to address those issues instead of letting them simmer or get away from you in a way that would then undermine your cohesion as a team. So as the team leader, you can use constructive language and open listening to really create a safe space for people to raise their issues and then be able to work together to resolve the issues. And showing your team that you do really value their feedback and that you are prepared to take action to promote the team harmony and the well-being amongst the team, it really builds that trust and engagement that you want to see in your team. So yeah, we're just really important. It's really important that you stay on top of those things. And then also in terms of how you can look after your team and yourself, Siobhan, if you don't mind just moving the slide deck on, you know, the risk of overwork and underwork is one that we've touched on, but it's worth just having a moment to talk about it in a bit more detail, because when people are at home, there's that real temptation to keep checking email or looking for updates and not switching off. It can be really hard to fight that. Or maybe, you know, people are procrastinating because they're actually motivated by others. So the best way to really mitigate against that risk is to just proactively track your team's workload. So back to what Siobhan was talking about in terms of managing for outcomes, if you're having those conversations with your team members about what it is that they're working on day to day, you will be able to monitor if they're overworked or underworked at this time and then be able to change tack with them. It also helps people feel really valued and visible if you are, I guess, monitoring that they're okay and asking them if they're okay. It's important that you don't expect a 24/7 availability from your team at this time, and a part of that is modeling that yourself. So talking really proactively about how you switch off, how you create that space between your work and your home. I mean, at the moment, we don't have that bus trip or that train trip or that car trip to be able to separate us from our work when we head home. We need to put in place some different transitions. And so you can make that a fun thing with your team. What are their transitions? Do they go for a walk around the block? Do they dance around the lounge room? What is it that they physically do that helps them to switch off from work and to, you know, switch on to the home space so that they can be present at home? What are their routines that will really help them to, yeah, separate the work from the home? It's important that the routines encourage things like taking breaks. So I guess that whole concept of leaving loudly that you might have heard of when we've talked about flexible working, breaking loudly is another concept that we might actually just let each other know, okay, I'm going to go and have lunch break now, or checking in the morning, good morning everyone, I've arrived at work, which actually just means that I've sat down at my desk and turned on the computer. But I guess they're new habits and their routines that we can get into as a team, making sure that people are taking those regular breaks. And when you have your check-ins with your team members about their workload, it's a good idea to be asking about their well-being at this time. So I know that the Are You OK campaign has developed a really great manager guide for asking in a non-intrusive way if your team members are okay. Yeah, so that would be a really good habit to get into at this time and really step up those efforts around making sure that people are okay and that people are staying in touch with each other throughout this time. Look out for those people in your team who might have all of a sudden gone quiet or seem to be withdrawing a little bit. Yeah, really important that you catch up with those people and make sure that they're okay. And really, I guess routines are important at this time because especially when the world feels quite chaotic, routines will give your team members that sense of control and just that they know what's happening, at least in the work that they're employed to do, could really help just their emotional space at this time too. And encourage people to stay active as well. So what can they do to stay active if people are in a time of isolation but they can still work? You know, can they do yoga at home or whatever it is? It's important that you have that conversation. Now, in terms of our resources that we have developed, we have been working on resources and tools for the sector to be able to work flexibly or manage flexible teams for almost 2 years now. So there are a heap of resources on our website, and we have recently structured that in a way that employees' resources are grouped together and managers' resources are grouped together and so on. So all the resources we have developed specifically for managers are in the same place. We've provided the website address there so that you can go on and have a look at that. But in particular, it would be good to look at the conversation guides. We've written them for employees and managers. So you can read the manager guide and ask your team members to read the employee guide. It will just help you get on the same page in terms of your approach to flexible working. Siobhan has talked about the team-based design approach to flexible working, and we've created a really practical toolkit that you can use to adopt that with your team. There is a dispersed team guide that we released just in January this year, and a lot of the content from today's session has been based on the team-based design toolkit and the dispersed team guide. But if you want to get into that in more detail, we encourage you to go to those resources. And then one other resource that we worked on earlier last year was skill sets. So we've designed those for employees, managers, HR, and for leaders. They're really about what you need to know, say, and do to either work flexibly or to support flexible working within your department or agency. They come with a self-assessment, so each individual person can undertake the self-assessment and find out maybe what their 3 strongest areas of flexible working are, and then what are their development areas. And then we produced a development guide that gives you a heap of different resources that are free and online so that you can work on developing in those areas. So that's another one that would be really great for you to have a look at. Siobhan, did you want to talk about the new LinkedIn group that we've set up? Thanks.
Sure. And then finally, we will, at the conclusion of this this webinar, we've created a members-only LinkedIn group, and we'll be in touch with all of you to invite you to join that. Now, the purpose of that group is it's unusual across the PSC for managers to be able to communicate unless it's through their own networks across agencies or across the sector. And we thought that this is a fantastic time for us to all start sharing some of the solutions that we've been coming up with. And I can see that there's been some fantastic contributions just on the chat here alone. So we'd love for that to be available to a wider audience. So we will invite everyone who's on LinkedIn to join that way. In that email that we'll send to you afterwards, for anyone who's not linked on LinkedIn, too many prepositions, we'll talk about some alternative methods to get you in touch as well. But the purpose of that members-only group, which means that the content is only available to members of the group, it's a forum you can use to ask questions, to receive advice, or to receive reference to guidance that we already have, and to share solutions and dilemmas with each other. And just to confirm, I can see there's been some requests. We will be adding all of today's slides and the templates that we've referred to today to that LinkedIn group as well. They're also all available on our website as well. So all those resources are there. So if you just search in LinkedIn for the address that's on screen there, so NSW Gov Flexible Working Support in LinkedIn, you'll be able to find it, or just wait to receive the invitation from us. So thank you to everyone. I'll hand back to Scott to say a few final words. If you'd like to, Scott, just nod. Yes.
Of course.
And we'd just like to reassure everyone that we're here. I mean, the flexible working team is a resource themselves for the entire sector. So do just reach out to us or access us via our website or via the LinkedIn group, because we are here to help through some pretty unprecedented times. Thank you.
So thanks, Siobhan and Kat, and thanks to the 870, I think it just about got up to it at one point, The key about this is us helping each other. So we've got a head start because we've been working on this for a couple of years, but we're all seeing these great ideas and innovations that people are doing that is making a real difference. Care, be kind to your colleagues, to your teams, to the people you work for, and actually we can really achieve great things still. And the remarkable thing I've seen in the past few weeks is how some work that might have taken us months in the past is happening in a couple of days because we're thinking differently and challenging the way we did things in the past. But fundamentally, working flexibly is different to what we were doing previously. So you've got to put a bit of effort in it to make a difference. And I think the tools and the ideas that we've talked about today are a really good start. So once again, go well, everyone. And thanks for your contribution and welcome any feedback to this. And please join the LinkedIn group so we can learn from each other.